Good morning everyone, and welcome back. Cumberland Outdoorsman here with another one of my 22 series videos. In today's video, I'll be covering the basic steps on how to sight in your 22 rifle, whether you choose to use open sights or a scope. Let me also take this opportunity to apologize for not posting any videos lately because the weather has just been so lousy here. For 2 weekends straight now, we've had just torrential rains, and the conditions have not been ideal or even suitable to try to make a video. But since the sun's out today, it's a little bit windy and we've got some background noise going on here. I've got a neighbor that's cutting some firewood, which is understandable. You know, you live out in a rural community. A lot of people still use firewood to heat their homes. But what I've got on the table here is a special rifle, and I'd like to also make special mention to a good friend of mine that I gained through the channel, Wayne Jenkins. He sent me this little rifle here because he wanted me to feature it in a video. This is a Glenfield Model 65. A lot of people haven't heard of these guns because the Model 60 was so extremely popular that it pretty much overshadowed a lot of the other rifles that were offered by Marlin and Glenfield, especially in their 22 line, that were, you know, special editions for certain distributors. This one here is a Golden 50, as you can see here, stamped on the barrel. And here you can see it's a Glenfield Model 65. I'm hoping that the camera picks that up, but I think the sun's shining on that well enough for you to be able to see that. And these were made for the Oklahoma Tire and Supply Company, Otasco, back in the 1970s. And they were offered by that store as a commemorative edition. Otasco was similar to Western Auto or a Tractor Supply Company, you know, pretty much the same type of store. And like I said, there were about 3,000 of these made. This one here came from the factory with the same type of receiver as the Model 60, where you can mount a scope. It had fully adjustable rear sights, and the front sight was encased in this barrel band that went around the barrel and the magazine tube. And I'm sure you've noticed by now that the magazine tube is solid brass. So that's another difference from the Model 60 that came out. None of those had these solid brass magazine tubes. The wood is, I believe, beech, could be birch. I always get those two confused, but it's definitely not walnut. And they had this impression pressed into the stock of some oak leaves here on the pistol grip and here on the fore end. Kind of similar to the squirrel stock Glenfield Model 60s, but still their own design. I really like this little oak leaf pattern here. And I believe I'm going to keep this gun in its original condition. I don't want to refinish it because they have become quite a collector's item. I would say it's a pretty accurate little rifle. This one also came with a micro groove rifled barrel, and they were produced in North Haven, Connecticut at the time by Marlin Firearms. Basically, it's the same design as a Glenfield or Marlin Model 60. Same gun, really. They came out with a golden trigger back in the day. This one here is faded a little bit, but it's definitely a golden trigger. And we're going to get out here and get it sighted in. I've never fired this gun. We're going to be sighting it in here at my shooting bench using some tools, some of which were also sent to me by my good friend Wayne Jenkins. This came in the mail yesterday. I didn't know what it was, but he sent me a gunsmith screwdriver set, an 89-piece deluxe set. So thanks a lot, Wayne. We'll be putting this to good use. And you know, if you're going to work on guns, especially if you have slotted screws or bolts in your gun, you need to use the right screwdriver or screwdriver bit to accommodate that type of screw or bolt, because if it doesn't fit that slot perfectly, you're going to round the edges off and mar them up and everything, and it really hurts the looks of the gun. And a lot of times you'll slip out of that slot and scratch the gun stock or whatever and just do unnecessary damage. So always use good gunsmith screwdrivers whenever you're working on your guns. So we'll be putting that to use here shortly. The other gun that I've got here on the table, you've seen this one before, folks. This is my Remington model 581, the latest acquisition. And I'll be removing these mounts here. I'll be using the same scope, but these mounts right here I'm going to be replacing and upgrading to these Redfield mounts. These are steel scope rings that I'll be upgrading this gun with. And when I get the scope mounted on the gun with those new rings, I'm going to take you through the steps on how to sight in this rifle. It's already sighted in with what's mounted on here. Nothing wrong at all with these mounts. These are made by Bushnell. Absolutely nothing wrong with those mounts, but I just wanted to upgrade a little bit to these steel mounts. Okay, these have double locking screws for the scope ring cap there, and they have the larger tightening screw there, so they're just a better built type of scope ring for the 22 rifle. So first of all, let's get this little rifle here sighted in and see how well it shoots. Okay folks, I've got 5 rounds in the magazine tube. As you can see, the bolt is open, so the gun is not loaded, and I've got a little target set up out here at 20 yards, fairly close distance, just to see where the gun is impacting. So we'll take a few shots and see where this gun's shooting. Here we go. Alright, as you can see, we've got 3 shots that are shooting a little bit high and to the right. So with the gun unloaded, as you can see, bolt is locked back, we're going to move the rear sight. Okay, and what you want to do is you want to move the rear sight in the direction that you want your bullets to impact. So now they're shooting to the right, we want to move the rear sight to the left. So I use this little mallet right here. It has a lead and a nylon end, something soft so you don't damage your gun. And what I like to do is put my thumb right here against this rear sight where we make the adjustment and just tap it over. You can see a little bit of the lead flaking off there, but I'm not damaging that gun at all. And since it's shooting a little bit high, we're going to move this adjustment down 1 notch. Right there. Now let's see where the gun impacts. See if we've moved it any here. Okay, that's 2 shots and the gun is empty. As you can see, we moved it a little bit, just a tad too far to the left. So let me tap it just a tad bit and see if we can get the gun right on target here. Get it loaded up here. All right, I think we're pretty well lined up there. I got one shot that's slightly to the right, but I think that was my mistake. But the other two hit right in the bullseye. Okay folks, I got some targets set up down here at 50 yards, like I always do, and we're going to see how well I can hit those targets at 50 yards using these open sights. Once again, lock the bolt open, and we're going to load up a few more rounds here. Kind of unusual seeing those brass cases going into a brass magazine tube, but it's really neat. Okay, the gun is not loaded, but when I pull it back one more time and release the bolt, the gun will be loaded. So here we go. All right, I see 2 squirrels, a bunny rabbit, and 3 cans, and then a swinging target. Let's shoot that bunny rabbit first. He's on the far left. Guess we'll have rabbit for supper tonight. Now the squirrel on the left. The squirrel on the right. Okay, and there's a few cans down there, but I'm going to shoot that swinging target there on the right. Okay, the first one was a miss, but the second shot hit. And let me hit that next can there, if I can. Okay, I'm going to load a few more. Just because that was so much fun. Well folks, I've got a new friend I'd like you to meet. This is a new target that I just recently got. I told you I'd be getting some more targets because I don't always want to show the same old thing. We're going to set up this little prairie dog out there, and it's supposed to be a swinging target that knocks down and then sets back up, so we'll see how well it does. But first I got to be able to hit it, so let's give it a try. All right, I went ahead and set up a few more targets down there at 50 yards, and I've got our prairie dog set up at 40 yards. That's him right there at the bottom of the screen on the left. So let's give him a try. I got the gun ready to be loaded, and take a few more shots here. Let's hit that prairie dog if we can. He's supposed to pop right back up, so let's see what happens. Looks like he went down and popped right back up. Okay, I'm going to shoot that can on the left. And I'm going to shoot that squirrel on the right. Let's shoot that squirrel again on the left there. And the swinging target on the right. Okay, the last shot I'm going to shoot at that can that's on the right. See if I can connect with that. All right. Well, folks, I'm quite pleased with this little rifle. Looks like it's going to be a real shooter, and it connected every time as long as I do my part. I got a little bit of glare off of the rear sight from the sun, and that's the reason I missed a few of those shots, because I didn't have it centered up just perfectly. But then I took my hand and kind of shielded that glare. And when I did that, I was able to connect with those targets. So next up, I'm going to go ahead and mount these rings on my bolt action and put the scope on there, and when I get that done, I'll be back with you and we'll get that rifle sighted in. Okay folks, I got my scope ring mount assemblies mounted to the receiver in the position that I wanted, so that I could get the ideal eye relief, so I can move my scope back and forth. That way when I'm sighting through the scope, I get a full picture. You know, you want to be able to see a nice, clear, full picture. And that's about right. You want to be able to have enough clearance for your bolt if you have a bolt action, so that it'll operate smoothly without interfering with your scope. And also make sure you leave these caps loose for the time being, so that you get the crosshairs in the scope aligned perfectly with the gun. You don't want them canted one way or the other, okay? You get out here and use a sandbag rest, or if you have a lead sled or whatever, you can get those crosshairs perpendicular and horizontal just the way they need to be, so that you'll be on target further down range in case you want to make a really long shot. You don't want a canted crosshair that'll throw your shot off further down range. You might be able to hit close targets, but as the range increases, you'll be off, because you'll have to move the scope to the right or to the left if they're not perfectly aligned. So this one here needs to go just a tad to the left. And you want to tighten these scope ring caps just enough to where they're a little bit snug, so that when you move the scope, it doesn't rock around inside the scope rings freely. It needs to hold the scope securely enough so that you can make fine adjustments and get it right where you need it, so that it's perfectly positioned. And once you get it that way, you can go ahead and snug these down. Make sure you use the right bit for your scope rings. You don't want to tighten all the way down on one side and then go to the other side. You want the gap between the scope ring cap here and the base to be the same on each side, okay? So pay attention to that. This one here has dual screws on each side, which really locks it down securely. And every time I tighten it, I look through the scope, make sure everything stays lined up, because as you tighten those caps, it can actually shift that scope, move it to the right or to the left. So make sure that your crosshairs stay perpendicular. A little bit more to mounting a scope than just throwing it on there. You know, you see people that have rifles, whether it's a 22 or a big game rifle, and you look through the scope and the scope's canted, you know, that's just not going to work. And if your crosshairs have moved a little bit, loosen them on one side and just slightly turn that scope. Really fine increments is all you need. And once you get it where you want it, you can go ahead and snug it down. By the way, I didn't mention to check this gun to see if it was unloaded, but I already cleared the gun before I started this portion of the video. Now, once again, after you snug it down, check it again. Make sure it stays lined up. That's perfect right there. Now, I've developed a feel for how tight to make these screws, but there are instruments out there where you can torque them down to the correct inch pounds. But I know pretty much exactly how far to go. You know, you don't want to go too tight and strip the threads. You just want to snug them down good. You're not tightening down a lug nut here. Scopes are fine instruments, and you can damage them by over tightening the rings, and you don't want to do that. So you want a nice even tightness from front to rear. You don't want the front ring to be tighter than the rear. You want them both to be equal. And on this rifle, we can remove the bolt very easily. So now I can bore sight the rifle before I start shooting. Go ahead and take the caps off. Make sure you keep up with your caps because they're real easy to lose, folks. Very easy. And what you want to do is you want to look down the barrel. I've got a clean barrel here. There's no dirt or anything in the barrel. And get that target that you're going to be shooting at centered up with the bore. And then look at your scope. Now, you want to align the crosshairs with your target and then look through the bore, and you can see where your bullets are going to be impacting. In this case, it's going to be shooting high and to the left. So I want to move my crosshairs down and to the right. And all you need is a coin. I use a nickel. So we're going to go to the left, or to the right, about 8 clicks, and then down about 6. Now I'm going to recheck. It really helps to have a bench like I've got here with sandbags or something to hold your rifle steady. I would encourage you to find a good steady rest if you don't have one before you try this. Okay, I think we're still a little bit high, so we'll just a tad more here, and I think we'll be right on the money, or very close to it. At least we'll be on the target so that we can see where the bullet impacts. Okay, one of the things I forgot to mention, and I just naturally assumed that everyone knew this, but I can't make that assumption because there may be some of you out there that are viewing this video that don't know this. But you'll notice on most scopes that there are 2 adjustments, one on top and one on the side. So when you take these turret caps off, you'll see that there will be a mark on the adjustment that'll either say right or left, or it'll be R or L, and there'll be a corresponding arrow indicating which way R or L would be, or right or left. And if your gun is impacting to the left, you'll want to move it to the right, as is indicated here. You'll see an arrow right there. I think it's going in this direction. And there's an R right here. Same thing with this adjustment. That's windage and elevation. This is your elevation adjustment right here. You'll see where it says either U or P or up or down, and there'll be a corresponding arrow indicating which direction up or down is. So if you're shooting low and you want your bullet impact to go up, you naturally would turn the direction that the arrow is indicating to move your point of impact up. Now, some scopes, I should mention, are reversed from that. They're opposite of that. So you have to make sure that your scope will correspond with the adjustment that you're trying to make. This is one way of adjusting your scope so that you're not blindly shooting at a target. You don't even know where the bullet went if it doesn't hit the paper. So by bore sighting, you can get really close. You know, sometimes you get it where you just have to do some fine adjustments and your gun is sighted in perfectly. So let me go ahead and reinstall the bolt here. And we'll get it loaded up and we'll take a few shots to see where this gun is impacting. I got this target set up at about 35 yards. It's fairly close, but you know, it's the ideal distance to sight in a .22 rifle. And then we can sight it in at 50 yards and see how far off we are down there. I'll go ahead and load up 5 shells here. Okay, now that I've got this rifle roughly bore sighted, I'm ready to shoot. I've got the scope set up on the gun just like I want it. And now it's time to see where the gun is going to impact. The distance here is about 35 yards. So let's give it a try here. Okay. That's one round and it went a little bit to the left. So I adjusted it just a tad too far, but I am on paper, as you can see. Okay, third shot. Let's see what happens with this one. All right, we're getting closer. We're on the target now. All right, I do not see a bullet hole. I'm assuming that one hit the black in the bullseye. Let's take another shot. All right, I'm going to get a closer look at that target and see where we're impacting. Okay folks, those last 2 shots hit exactly dead center at 35 yards, so I decided to move the target down here to 50 yards and see where we're impacting at that range. So I've got some more rounds loaded up. Let's see where this rifle prints them at 50 yards. It's the same target. As you can see, there are 2 bullet holes, or 3 bullet holes, at about 7 o'clock or so on the target. And then there's 2 right in the middle, dead center, from shooting it at 35 yards. So let's see where this one hits. Okay, I think it hit just a tad to the right from the bullseye. Yep, it's shooting just a little bit to the right. So I'm going to move it a couple of clicks to the left. Not sure, but I think that one hit just below the bullseye. I think they're all clustering just a little bit low of the bullseye, about a quarter of an inch or so from it. Yeah, it's still a little bit to the right. Well, folks, I got 5 more rounds loaded up in the magazine here, and I made some fine adjustments to the rifle, and I've got another target pinned up here at 50 yards. As you can see, it's a bright orange target just above the one I was shooting at a while ago. It's right between those 2 squirrels. So let's shoot a 5-shot group and see where this little rifle is grouping now that we've made the final adjustments on the scope. The wind is blowing a little bit today, so some of the bullets may be outside of the group somewhat. A little wind deflection going on. I think that one went a little bit high and to the right, about the 1 o'clock position. Alright, go retrieve this target and we'll discuss that group here in just a moment. Okay guys, I went ahead and retrieved that target, and I'll be discussing that in the final segment of this video. But first we're going to have a little fun with the bolt action Remington and shoot some of these steel targets in the cans. So here we go. First I'm going to shoot that prairie dog. And let's see, let's shoot that squirrel on the left right in the head. Let's make a headshot on him. I think we can handle that. shoot that swinging target just below that squirrel there. Got that target cleaned off. Well, there's a little bit more that was underneath that one. Let's see if we can get that cleaned off. Well, it's stuck on there pretty good. Alright, let's go with the can on the far left. Next can up in the middle. The last can, that target's a little bit on the bottom of that particular can. That went right through. Alright, the last can standing. Hit it, I think it just went right through it. Smack it one more time here. I see a bullet hole, it went right through that can. Let me aim at the bottom, see if I can knock it off that pedestal. Okay. Now that squirrel down there, I would aim at that target, but I'm going to shoot him in the head too. That's squirrel dumplings for supper, folks. Well, folks, as I mentioned, I wanted to discuss this target here that I sighted this rifle in with. First of all, at 35 yards, you could see that I was shooting a little bit low and to the left. So I adjusted the scope about 8 clicks to the right and 7 clicks up. And at 35 yards, I shot 2 bullet holes right into the center right there, and I couldn't even see those even through the scope at this distance. So I moved the target down to 50 yards and I shot 5 more shots, and that group right there is what resulted. As you could see, I was shooting a little bit low and to the right. So I pinned up another target and loaded 5 more rounds and shot that 5-shot group at 50 yards. I'm pretty well centered up. The first shot went a little bit high and to the right. That's really my fault, because I mentioned that there were gusts of wind and I should have anticipated that. So that's not really the gun's fault, that was my fault. And then the 4 subsequent shots went right in there around the bullseye. So the gun's sighted in now. And hopefully I gave you some pointers in this video on how to sight in your rifle, whether you use open sights or a scope. But that's basically it, folks. You know, it's not really that hard. Today was kind of a raw day, a little bit windy, so it made it a little bit more difficult. A calm day is better, and if you have a bench rest, that makes it even easier. And one more thing I'd like to mention, that if you're going to go hunting with your gun, make sure you sight in your gun with the ammunition that you want to use while you're hunting, because points of impact can change from one type or one brand of ammunition to another. So, you know, just be aware of that. So let me thank you for coming along. I hope you really liked the video, and like I said, I hope it was helpful to you. And remember, if you like to go hunting, fishing, camping, shooting, hiking, whatever it may be, I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. And until next time, remember, hit that like button, smash the bell icon, and subscribe. That way you'll know when more videos like this one will be coming your way. This is the Cumberland Outdoorsman wishing you well. I'll see y'all in the next video. Take care, my friends.